Hello and welcome to episode 5 of Chel Squared. It is Thursday night, my favorite time of the week when I'm not working. It is time to talk for an hour about hockey. Isn't that just beautiful? Originally, we were supposed to have Rick Carpinello on, who covers the Rangers for The Athletic, but because of personal reasons, he had to drop out. That's perfectly understandable, and I hope everything is okay with him. Replacing him is somebody that is totally up to the task. We have Connor Small on for the first half of the show, who worked for the U.S. National Team Development Program with the U18s and the U17s. We're going to be talking to him about Jack Hughes, Keandre Miller, and more players that he saw not only firsthand, but he talked to them, he worked with them for hours upon hours every day, so there'll be stories to tell, I bet, from Connor. On the second half of the show, we have Cam Kerry from WEEI, who is an intern for WEEI, I apologize, and he was at Bruins camp. He saw the Bruins prospects in action, and he will join us later in the show to talk about that and Adam Henrique's contract and Artemi Panarin's lack of a contract and more. So we have an outstanding show. By the way, we're on Facebook now, Chel Squared. We're on Twitter at Chel Squared. We are on Google Play now. So we are on every platform. We are, besides MySpace. I mean, unless you have MySpace. I mean, no one... to my knowledge, no one's on MySpace anymore. We're not on MSN Messenger. We don't have that either. But we are on Facebook, Twitter, you name it, we're on it. Connor Small, how are you?
I just had to go and deactivate my MySpace now because of that.
I'm sorry, man. But no more. No more.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks for having me. This is always exciting to be able to talk some hockey.
Absolutely, man. So you witnessed firsthand the likes of Jack Hughes and Keandre Miller. Can you talk to those that don't necessarily know what this program is, what the U.S. National Development Team program is, and how these players evolve from being these 16-year-olds to ready to go NHL draft ready?
Yeah, so the NTDP, the National Team Development Program, it's a two-team program, and it consists of the under 17 and under 18 U.S. national teams. And so what that means is the two birth years that bring those kids under to those age levels, the 16, 17-year-olds from all over the country. So we've had kids from Scottsdale, Arizona to Maine and everywhere in between. They get brought in and brought under one roof. The program started just over 20 years ago in Ann Arbor, Michigan, has since changed now in its fourth season at USA Hockey Arena in Plymouth, Michigan. And they get battle tested, man. These are, again, they're kids. They're 16, 17-year-olds who presumably will pursue hockey as a career. And again, they're the best at that age level. And it's interesting because a lot of what they do is kind of putting them up against failure each and every day. The schedule that they play, the main schedule is against the United States Hockey League, which is the top level of junior hockey in the United States. And those, although the league starts at 16 years old, it goes up until 21 if they're enrolled in the college courses. And that's the average age is probably right around 19 to 20. And so again, these 16 and 17-year-olds day in and day out are competing against the top age group, the top talent at that age group in the United States. And like I said, it battle tests them. Historically speaking, the under 17 year is just absolutely brutal for them. They don't win a whole lot. These are kids who typically speaking have gone from being the best on their team, the best in their state, maybe even the best in their region. And then they come to the NTDP, their under 17 year, and they get tested. And then they move on to the under 18 team, where they then have to get tested even more by playing up against the NCAA college opponents. Last year, the U18 team saw the likes of University of Michigan. They saw Michigan State University, and then a handful of other games as well. And that's all of that on top of, you've got of course, the international schedule, which is what the whole program is kind of based around, is winning the gold medals at those events as well. You've got some world challenges, and then obviously, most notably for this program is the under 18 World Championship. So that's kind of in one breath, I guess, or a couple breaths, what the NTDP is all about.
Absolutely, man. I mean, you've seen the likes of Jack Hughes and Kandre Miller. As I said, is Jack Hughes sincerely the number one generational talent that people have been calling him over the past year or so? Is he truly the next Crosby, the next Ovechkin, what have you? Is he really that good?
That's the next Crosby, the next McDavid, what have you. That's hard to tell right now. He's just a 16-year-old kid, and I know that Jack would tell you the same thing. He is just 16. He hasn't really accomplished a whole lot yet. And again, he would say the same thing. There's plenty more that he would like to accomplish, but at the same time, I personally think, and I think all of the scouts and everybody that has seen him play in person could tell you the same thing. You look back at what he just did at the Under 18 World Championship. And he was the tournament leader in points at the age of 16 years old. And he's going to be able to do that again this coming year when they go to Sweden at that tournament. And so it's impressive, but it's also kind of frightening to see the success that he had at this first year and his under 17 year. And you just think about what he can do next year, especially with the talent he has behind him. But yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think Jack Hughes has the ability to be that next best American-born player, and the generational talent gap continues to grow smaller. When you look back in top American-born players' history, you look at guys like Patrick Kane, and then maybe a bit of a gap between him and then Austin Matthews, and now not even 5 years later or so, you get a guy by the name of Jack Hughes. And so I think that speaks a lot to what USA Hockey, especially the NTDP, is doing, to where the gap of those quote unquote generational talent guys is just growing smaller and smaller.
Besides the obvious Jack Hughes, who is, in your mind, one of the top players that have just gotten drafted from your program that you think that you even expect maybe that are just going to demolish the NHL? That may be a name that isn't being talked about as much as Jack Hughes in next year's draft. But what name really stands out to you the most?
Well, from this past year's team, from the guys that just got drafted, there's a handful of guys who I think can make immediate impact. You look at somebody like Oliver Wahlstrom, who I have never personally seen in person somebody shoot with confidence like he does. He's got an absolute bomb that's NHL ready yesterday. I think he's the obvious choice out of the group that just got drafted, but the list goes on. You've got guys like Kandre Miller. You saw the Rangers trade up to draft him, and I think that was spectacular. He's a kid who started off as a winger, who's now a defenseman by trade, and he's got all the talent that a winger would have, and he's got all the talent that a defenseman should have as well. The dude can move, he can play, he can do everything that you would want him to do as a player, and he's a good guy too, and I could say that about just about everybody on that team, but he is truly a good dude. I think Joel Farabee is another name that you want to watch out for, and it's really interesting. I ran into Coach Appert, who was the head coach of him and Keandre and Oliver Wahlstrom last year when we were at lunch one day, and Coach Appert had said in his mind, although Farabee may not have been the most talented player on the team, he was the best player on the team. And again, you look at the guys who were on that team last year, that speaks a lot. So the Flyers, I don't know, they picked him a little bit later on. I can't remember exactly what number, but you get a guy like that who is just an absolute force on the ice and a leader in the locker room as well. That's a pretty solid pick, and maybe not quite the name recognition as the other guys in front of him, but certainly not a bad pick by any stretch of the imagination.
Do you have maybe a story about Joel Farabee that maybe I or the majority of people don't know about? You have to have something on him, right?
Maybe not on Farabee. He's a pretty intense dude, but he's a funny guy. I think one thing that pops out to me immediately is when we were watching them at the Under-18 Worlds this past year in Russia. It wasn't the best place in Russia. It was kind of in the middle of nowhere in Chelyabinsk, and they were trying to find ways to have some fun. And after a big win at the helm was Drew DeRitter. He was getting a post-game interview, and then out comes the next member of the media, which was Joel Farabee, came out to ask him a question. So I think we all got a kick out of that, and it shows kind of what Joel is all about. But yeah, that was a quite the sight to see, and I know all the media members there got a kick out of that as well. I think we have a GIF of that somewhere, actually. You'd have to ask Chris Nolt, the communications manager, but I think he's got that gift up.
All right, well, I will reach out to him, and hopefully, I will have that GIF on Chel Squared tomorrow. Hopefully, no promises, but that would be quite the GIF to put on the page. So, what about possible sleepers, perhaps? Who in the players that you've seen are not getting quite the recognition that you think they deserve, yet are gonna dominate the NHL?
You're talking about for the upcoming U18 group, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, oh man, I mean, just wait in a couple months here. You'll start to see the names flowing through this team, and you just look at the success they had last year is chock full of talent. That, I mean, there's going to be plenty of them that go in the first round, but I mean, even more so that will go in the later rounds that just don't, again, they don't have that name recognition of maybe a Jack Hughes, but they'll make impacts as well. And again, I want to focus on the success of that team because it was so unprecedented, and it was just an absolute joy and kind of a bizarre chain of events to even be a part of. Last year, I think the under 18 team that Walsham and Keandre Miller and Farabee were a part of, as their under 17 year, I think they might have won 4 or 5 games in the United States Hockey League. And this team this year, the under 17 team, they made a run to the USHL conference final. So again, that's and that was without Jack Hughes and company, because they were up playing in Russia for the under 18 World Championship. And so again, this team it runs deep, and it's not just that top end talent, but they've got plenty of guys below them. So the obvious first rounder guys next year, you're thinking of like Jack Hughes, Alex Turcotte, Cole Caulfield, Spencer Knight, but there's plenty of guys below them. I think personally, a couple names that you'd want to start to memorize now would be a guy like Trevor Zegras, who he plays with quite the flair, his personality too. He plays the same way that he acts off the ice, if that makes any sense. He's got plenty of spunk, plenty of flair. A guy who probably any other year could have made the under 18 roster for the World Championship this year is Matt Boldy, who again is another name you'll want to look for. Not even just at the draft, but in the upcoming year with the NTDP. I don't know, a couple other names. A kid who really made a name for himself during the USHL playoff run was Johnny Beecher, who he's just a big dude who can really skate. And I know the kids during the playoff run were talking about how fast he is, and whenever he had the puck, it was just kind of unfair because he would just motor his way by everybody. So not only is he a big dude, but he's got the speed of a guy half his size. So it's pretty impressive to see somebody like him. And then another one who I think you'll probably hear his name thrown around quite a bit. He made his way onto the U18 roster for the World Championship this year, was Cam York. And he's on the back end there of the defense who really proved himself to be worthy of joining that under 18 team roster this year too. So, I mean, the list goes on. You can't really stop at just those names. It was a whole team effort this past year. And again, you saw it when the top 7 guys from that team were brought up to the under 18 team. They still saw success. And it was interesting too, because I remember talking as a staff, like when we're looking at the USHL playoff run and you're looking at when should we release tickets to go on sale for this and that, and you're thinking there's no possible way that they can go on to the next round, is there? And they kept doing it. They kept proving everybody wrong. So it was, like I said, it was cool to be a part of, and they're going to get the recognition that they deserve this year. They might not lose a game this year. And maybe I'm joking about that. Maybe I'm not, but it's very possible. They are that good.
Wow, that's incredible. So humor me. I'm a Rangers fan, so humor me a little bit. Tell me a little bit more about Keandre Miller, because you mentioned that he was a winger before and now he's a defenseman. Tell me a little bit more about that transition and how he's excelling not only in being a defenseman, but how smoothly he went from being a forward to now manning the blue line.
Yeah, I don't know a whole lot about the transition there. I think it actually happened at least several years ago. But from what the coaches were saying and from what he says, it seems pretty natural. And if you've seen the guy skate, um, you used the word smooth there just a couple seconds ago, and that's it right there. He is one of the smoothest skaters that you can see. Um, Picasso on ice. He's a
Wow.
great skater, a great player, and like I said, an even better guy. And I know that you're a Rangers fan, so you want to hear things like that. When you get a good player, you also want to have a good character guy, and that's who Keandre is. And speaking of Keandre being a good character guy, and hockey players obviously are known for, and not just hockey players, but athletes are known for having some kind of weird rituals. And I've seen my fair share of weird pregame rituals or superstitions. And Keandre, at some point last year or during the season, I couldn't quite remember when, but I was walking through the crowd or through the stands delivering the pregame notes, and Keandre was doing some stretches in the stands. And as I'm walking by, he decided to give me a hug. And I don't know if I'm a lucky hugger, but it turns out he ended up scoring a pair of goals that game. And there was the birth of a new superstition, new ritual, where before every game, as we're doing the starting lineups, Keandre had to give me a hug before he ran out there on the ice. And sometimes he scored, sometimes he didn't, but it was a pretty cool little superstition and ritual to be a part of. And again, I think that speaks volumes of the kind of guy that Keandre is. He's a real good dude, and like I said, an even not a bad hockey player for sure.
So now I guess you have to move to New York and
Yeah,
follow him around and
yeah,
be in the tunnel.
I've got to figure out a way to uproot myself and move to New York and give the pregame hug, I guess.
Absolutely. I mean, that's music to my ears personally as a Rangers fan, but not only as a Rangers fan, but as a hockey fan. You want to not only watch players like that, but you want players like that in the league that can skate like, like Picasso, like you just said. You want these players in the league to show off the beauty of the game and just the way that raw skill that just not everybody has on the ice. And to have someone like Keandre Miller kind of showcase that, I think that is a huge step to, if you look at an opening, like a crack in the door, right, for the future of the NHL and for the future of hockey as a sport. To see these players that have these kind of skills, it's definitely a treat to watch.
Absolutely. And the phrase I used when I was explaining these group of kids to people around the community there in Plymouth when I was there is they are fantastic hockey players, but they're even better kids. They really are. It's a great group of guys from the top to bottom. They all get along, not with just themselves, but with the coaches, with the staff in the office. And it's really awesome to see them develop not just into great hockey players, but into fantastic young men. Because again, one thing that people forget, these are 16 and 17-year-old kids. They're going through high school just like everybody else. They don't just play hockey every day. They still have to go and do schoolwork and pass their tests and get good grades. It's not just a cakewalk for them. If anything, it's more difficult than any other hockey team at that age group.
Right, absolutely. I mean, they are high schoolers, but I'm sure they got into some sort of hijinks, right? You have to have at least one or two crazy stories that you can share with me right now.
Uh, I don't want to peel the curtains back that much. Of course, there are some shenanigans that they get into. You always got to start with the fact that they're 16-year-old kids.
Right.
They're gonna do things that 16-year-old kids do, and that's again another important thing to realize. But for the most part, I think that everybody there in Plymouth got lucky last year. There wasn't a whole lot of groundbreaking stories on things that these kids were doing wrong, because they were just doing a whole lot of good on and off the ice. They were doing a whole lot of winning. They were doing a whole lot of good community service work. And that's always nice to do too. And a lot of that work wasn't even, forced upon them. And again, that all goes back to these being great character guys. So I don't know if I have any dirt that I can share, but I mean, the good stories and the positivity flows through that team in more ways than one.
I mean, absolutely. Do you think that these games if televised, would not only bring attention to the program but also get more kids involved in hockey. Because for one, I mean, both of us are super hardcore hockey fans. That, I mean, right now it's the middle of July. There's no hockey going on, and I need hockey. I need to watch hockey. If their games were on TV during the season, do you think it would attract an audience? Because I know that you guys sell tickets, to go to games and to watch the games
Right.
live, but there's not a whole lot, if any, to my knowledge, of programming of their games on TV or radio for that matter. So do you think that that's the next step for the program, is to advertise the program itself and the stars of tomorrow and all that in TV and radio?
Yeah, and I don't see why not. You're starting to see United States Hockey League, not just commercials, but things like the showcases and the top prospects games are starting to be aired on NHL Network. And again, that's the league that the NTDP predominantly plays in. And you even look at the whole mindset behind the change from Ann Arbor to Plymouth. In Ann Arbor, they played in a place called the Cube that had a occupancy of maybe 300. The program was not put in place to make money and to draw fans to it. It just happened on its own. When people started to want to come and to see these top-notch guys play every single day in their own backyard, USA Hockey had to oblige with that. And obviously USA wanted their own rink, and that was the main reason behind USA Hockey Arena. But also, when you have demand for a product that's such a high quality, you're going to want to find a way to honor what the consumer wants. And that was one of the main reasons behind moving to Plymouth, was to have a rink that could hold, not just the fans that want to come watch the team playing the USHL, but also to come watch the top talents from around the world too. USA Hockey Arena hosts plenty of international events. They hosted Women's Worlds just a couple of years ago when USA won gold against Canada. That's a shameless plug right there. Yes, it is. But yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think it's trending in that direction.
You
People
can't see
want
it. There's a smile on my face.
people want to see Austin Matthews and Dylan Larkin and Patrick Kane and Jack Hughes. I don't know if it's in the immediate future to be televised, but I don't see why it shouldn't be. It's growing. The sport continues to grow. USA Hockey as a whole saw the numbers across the board and all the age levels of participation in hockey up. And that's where it starts. It starts at the grassroots level. That's how, kids get involved in hockey. And then whether or not they continue to play hockey, they will probably stay hockey fans at the very least. And that's what we want to see more of.
We know that Canada televises a lot of their junior games, the Q and the O. They love televising those games, not only to kind of showcase the future stars, but also people love watching them. I mean, it's Canada, right? The old trope that every Canadian is born with a hockey stick in one hand and maple syrup in the other.
Right,
The old stereotype. But I mean, it if Canadians weren't watching the games, then they wouldn't be televised, right? So people have to be watching them, and then for TV stations like Sportsnet and those kind of stations to continue televising them. So if you kind of build that here, not only on NHL Network, right? Because not everyone has NHL Network. I think if they were to partner up with NBC because the NHL is partnered with NBC, it'd be easier. But even a different station, and not even on top of that, maybe get the next broadcasters, the guys like me in college that want to do broadcasting, that want to do play-by-play,
Sure.
that want to do the analyzing, the reporting stuff. Get those kids involved also. Maybe, I don't know how, if room and board and all that would be supplied, or the logistics of that'd be a different story. But get the reporters and the play-by-play guys of tomorrow, inject them into the program that showcases the on ice stars of tomorrow, and you might and you might see the off-ice stars of tomorrow
Sure.
shine and break through as well. What do you think of that?
Yeah, and I think it's you made a good point about the success of junior hockey in Canada, and it's a very obvious line to draw. If there's such success with Canadian junior hockey leagues like, the entire CHL, then why is there no success in terms of, fan participation and fan bases in the United States with the USHL and junior hockey leagues? And I don't really have anything to back this up, but if you were to ask me that question, I think it's because of the success of college hockey here. And that's something that Canada just simply does not have. They've got a whole huge group of people who love to watch junior hockey, but it's at least somewhat of a parallel comparison to the NCAA here. So it's awesome to see the success of NCAA hockey. I love it. Anybody that's a hockey fan loves it. But I think that would probably be the one thing that's holding back junior hockey here being such a wild success, is because you have, whether it be somebody who goes to those schools who play college hockey, or people who are just big fans of those schools, and they're diehard fans, and it's a lot different of a product in terms of what you're watching on the ice, in terms of college hockey versus junior hockey. But they're both equally as talented, just vastly different age groups. Again, even with college hockey possibly sniping some fans away from junior hockey is still on the rise here. It's not like it's struggling. It's certainly doing well on the level of people watching and going to the games, but also in terms of the participation. Again, as I was talking about with the success, beginning at the very young age levels all the way up into the under 18 level, with the participation, and the skill level is just unmatched right now.
I mean, you're absolutely right. I think in terms of off ice, people that could get involved, like the broadcasters, like the reporters, on ice players have a coaching system. They have their head coach. They have they have people around them to guide them through this process. Well, who's to say you can't do that for the for the guys with the microphones, the guys with the cameras? Obviously get professionals to help out, but get people there that are interested in being behind the microphone, get people that are interested in being behind the camera, and I think even production and stuff like that. I think if you combine on ice as well as off ice opportunities, you can see not only a boom in the program, but I think just an overall rise in admiration for the sport. Because not only do you have players that are players period, but you also have opportunities for people that love the game, but like myself are just not good at it anymore, or never good at it period, that can sort of maybe kind of play occasionally in beer league sometimes. That's it. That's but we love the sport, and we can't not be around it. So I'm not saying that you have to implement this now, and the logistics of this could be massive. There's probably a lot of money that goes into this, and all of that, but that could potentially not only awaken the love of hockey in people, but also here we go with a program that not only showcases on ice stars, but here's a program that before kids even get to college, or you can get some college kids as well as a good opportunity, join forces with college kids that want opportunities like this as well, get them involved. And the more that the more they see these opportunities, the one, the better they become, and two, the more younger kids see these opportunities and they want to get behind the mic as well.
Absolutely. 100%.
All right, so Connor, one last question before I let you go here. What is next for the Chicago Blackhawks? They got rid of Marian Hossa's contract, luckily. They still have Jonathan Taves' $10.5 million deal until 2023, which, he's fine. He's a great player, but he's also capped off at like 70 points. He's not a point per game player. To give him $10.5 million, that's not looking too good. You have Duncan Keith locked up long term, who's 35. You have Seabrook locked up, who's 33 long term. What's next for the Chicago Blackhawks in terms of just cap space, but also the youth movement? What's their plan going into not only next season but beyond?
I think the short answer is I'm not sure if there is a plan. I certainly don't know what would be next for the team, and I'm not really sure that they have a firm grasp on what's next either. Are they a playoff team? Probably not at this point. Are they a team that need to completely blow up and rebuild? Probably not. So they're in a weird limbo land, and this has been coming. This has been a long time coming. People could see this coming years ago with the contracts that they were loading up, and now it's finally biting them in the rear end, and it's an interesting time. I'm a Hawks fan, obviously from Chicago, but it's an interesting time as just a hockey fan to see a team that had so much success for such a long period of time to now kind of come crashing back down to earth, not so subtly. You have an aging Kane and Taves, and you have the bad contracts still in a couple of guys, namely in Brent Seabrook. Like you said, you luckily shipped off Marian Hossa's contract without giving up much talent. I know people loved Vinny Hinostroza, and he's a good player. I don't think he was a part of the absolute need for the future. But like I said, I'm not really sure what the plan would be. I know that Stan Bowman said the other day he doesn't feel like they have to do any more in this offseason, and I don't know if that's totally untrue. For the first time in a while, he has some cap room to play with, and I don't know if he wants to play with it because he's played with it before, and here we are now having to unload contracts. So I think they're not in a desperation panic mode place, but they're definitely in a place to where they need to begin to think about what's next.
Connor, as always, this has been sensational. You are the best, and dude, I mean, like this USA Development Program conversation has been a blast. The Chicago Blackhawks, I don't know what the hell is going on with them. We'll see. I guess in the coming months, perhaps by the deadline, we'll have more of a clear, maybe sort of understanding of what Chicago's planning to do. Because unless they're looking at a final playoff push, which even if they do make the playoffs, I mean, what are they gonna do in the playoffs? It's gonna be interesting to see with the Blackhawks and what they're gonna do. And Jack Hughes coming up soon in the next draft. That'll be very interesting to see who loses for Hughes and how Vancouver now handles Quinn Hughes. That'll be exciting as well. Connor, thank you so much. You are the best, and I'll talk to you again real soon.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate it.
Joining me for the second half of the show is Cam Kerry, interning for WEEI, who had a front row seat to Bruins camp. He will help us dive into that, his biggest surprises from Bruins camp, what he saw out there on the ice. We're going to get into Adam Henrique, that contract, which is a little scary because he's 30 years old, got a 5-year deal. Oh, boy. We're going to talk about Artemi Panarin, big news coming out of Columbus earlier today, and Elias Lindholm, and potentially more. We'll see how Cam answers these next few questions. Cam, how are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you for having me on. I'm very excited.
Absolutely, man. So first of all, Bruins camp. How was that?
It was definitely an interesting experience because there wasn't a lot of hype going into it. A lot of the top name prospects notably weren't there. Trent Frederick was taking classes. They told a couple of prospects that they didn't need to be in attendance in order to free up some camp invites for rising college seniors. Excuse me. Sorry about that. So it was notably under the radar for camp. But nonetheless, we got a good look at a lot of prospects rising through the system that weren't as heralded, that got to step into the spotlight. Martin Bakos, who the team signed from Slovakia, who's 28, notably a lot older than a lot of the participants there. He was able to shine and really impress management. So it was quite an interesting week. The person I was most impressed with was goaltender Jeremy Swayman. He started at University of Maine last year as a true freshman. The coaching staff there expect him to play a handful of games, anywhere from 10 to 20, and he stepped in, played 31 games, He finished 4th in NCAA Division I in terms of save percentage, posting a .921 save percentage, leading the University of Maine to their first winning season since 2013-14. So he was definitely a guy that you saw out there being aggressive, commanding the net, and was really impressed with him, especially considering that the Bruins don't have a ton of top-notch goaltending prospects in their system.
Which player out there on the team did you kind of come in and not expect to see much out of, perhaps, but really surprised you throughout camp?
So Oscar Steen, he did not put up a ton of points in Sweden last season. He is team's 6th-round draft pick from 2016. And the first day, they were doing wind sprints to start off practice. And Steen won every single wind sprint. And you're kind of looking at it like, wow, this guy's got wheels. And Jamie Langenbrunner had a tremendous NHL career. He's the Bruins Director of Player Development. He said that he'd like to see Steen score more. He played 45 games with Farstad last season, only had 4 goals. He came into camp and couldn't seem to miss the back of the net. He was blowing by guys. He was scoring goals. He earned the praise of many Bruins coaches on the ice with him. He looked very composed. He has showed a willingness to play center, even though he's a natural wing. And he definitely opened some eyes this week for one of the guys that wasn't as hyped as much.
What's a name that not only impressed you coming in, but also impressed the brass that were looking at all these guys?
So Jack Studnicka was the team's 2nd-round pick in the 2017 draft, and he turned some heads saying that he was trying to make the team this season. For a 1999, he's not very big. He's 6'2", 180. At least that's what they list him. He certainly doesn't look like that on the ice. His name looks like it takes up most of his jersey, but he definitely impressed. The Bruins have an opening on that 3rd-line center, and there are a lot of internal contenders for that job. But Studnicka really stepped up. He was the first one in line in every single drill. He tried to lead, even though he wasn't necessarily one of the oldest, but his skill shined through. He won battles to the puck. He showed his creativity. He was able to score some goals. I mean, this is a guy that is more than a point-a-game scorer in Oshawa when he captained them. So he definitely has the skills, and it'll be interesting to see if he can bring some good momentum into actual camp and into the Bruins International Series in China in the preseason.
Tell me a little bit about Urho Vakanainen, who the Bruins drafted in the 1st round last year, 18th overall. He was at prospect camp. How did he look?
Well, Urho's an interesting case because he is a typical defensive defenseman. He's always in the right place. He has an active stick, whether it's blocking shots, whether it's poke checking. He's very hard to get past. But he's also one of those guys, it's hard in drills to notice it because he doesn't do a ton offensively. And the Bruins wanted to push his aggressiveness this week. I wasn't the most impressed with him. Obviously, he has a lot of skills. So as the week progressed and the drills went from more skill-based drills to battle drills to eventually the scrimmage, you got to see his defensive prowess and his capabilities in his own zone. He was just 19 and playing in the Finnish league, and he played 22 minutes a game for them against grown men. So it's clear that he can handle the workload. And you got to see that maturity on the ice. But I'm not sure if he's necessarily ready for the jump up to the Bruins, especially after the signing of John Moore. They have 8 defensemen. Never mind Jakob Zaboral, Jeremy Lauzon. So it's a very crowded defensive corps, and that could lead for him seeing a lot of time in Providence.
What can you expect from the Bruins this season? Because they are loaded, but at the same time, they do raise some sort of questions from some people in regards to, can they beat the new Toronto team? Can they beat Pittsburgh? Can they, beat Washington? Can they beat Tampa Bay? What do you see from the current lineup of the Boston Bruins?
I see a very tough road in the Atlantic Division. Tampa Bay in the second round of the playoffs kicked the Bruins' butts because they were faster than them. They trapped them in the neutral zone. The Bruins had no idea after game one how to figure out Tampa Bay, and it showed. They got their butts kicked. Now, after Toronto added Tavares, it's like, all right, Rick Nash might not be returning due to health concerns. Very valid. But you look at this team, and they have good players on defense. They have a great coach in Bruce Cassidy, who's implemented a great system. But really, a lot of that scoring comes from the first line. I mean, you have three of the best players in the league on that first line, but the second line is lacking. The bottom lines are lacking in terms of generating offense. So I'm interested to see what Bruce Cassidy does if he keeps Pasternak on that first line, because they might promote one of the prospects up to such as Anders Bork to fill that second line right wing role. But can they generate enough offense? Like, this probably sounds crazy because they scored goals in bunches last season, but Krejci's another year older. Backes is another year older. They have huge contracts, and the team has a hair under $3 million to spend. Their roster's already full. So can you keep up with Toronto, who has two of the best centers in the league on its team? Never mind Nazem Kadri, not his biggest fan, but a lot of people can make the Marchand comparison in terms of the chippiness and dirtiness of the two. I mean, we had to fight and claw to beat them last year. Can we do it again? Now, I like the way the Capitals look. I like the way the Penguins look. So the Bruins could be a year after being 1 point away from the best team in the East, fighting for the third, fourth, or fifth spot in the East this season.
Well, here's the thing, right? Before any other conversation can be had, we have to take a look at Zdeno Chara. 41 years old, $5 million this year. 1-year contract, that's fine. But you can't play him top 2 minutes and expect the Bruins to do well. Chara, I'll give you, he was one of the best defensemen in his prime, in Ottawa, in the Islanders, I guess, and mostly in Boston, but he's 41 years old. He cannot keep up. His legs are just not what they used to be. His hands are still there, his stick is still there, but he cannot, you have forwards that are blowing by him now. You saw it in the playoffs. You saw it in the regular season. Until you get rid of Chara, I say get rid of in quotations because Zdeno Chara means a lot to not only the team but to the city of Boston. But I mean, you can't play him top 2, probably not even top 4 minutes anymore if you expect the Bruins to be competitive in the playoffs, because he just cannot stop speedy players from blowing past him, attacking the net one-on-one. Until you find a different role for Chara, whether it be top 6 or maybe, tell him to, hang him up and take a front office job. I don't think the Bruins can realistically do as much damage as they might look like they might on paper. David Backes is 34 years old. $6 million until 2021. Projected lineups have him in a top 6 role. Backes, he can still score, but he's not St. Louis David Backes. And if you have a guy like that in your top 6, I am not sold on the Bruins. They're gonna make the playoffs. Rask and Bergeron and Pasternak and Krejci are not gonna let them miss the playoffs. That's not gonna happen. But at the end of the day, I don't think they're going to make as much damage as the team probably thinks it's going to.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned the Chara situation, because you look at the defensive logjam that they have right now, and you're looking at it, well, You have 8 NHL players on that defense. So you're going to sit 2 of them up on the 9th floor in suits? Or you're going to dress 8 defensemen? No, both of those are absolutely silly. And you'd think, all right, well, you can't trade Chara. Like, right, he's the heart and soul of the team.
Also, no move clause. So you can't,
also,
even if
yes,
you wanted to.
Even if you wanted to, you can't. And so a lot of people speculate about Torrey Krug. And they point out, well, he's so offensive. He's small. I mean, Bruins fans are obsessed with grit. They think we're still the
grit.
bad.
Hashtag grit.
Hashtag grit. But they think that you still need the tenacity of the big bad Bruins, when in fact, we tried to go in and outmuscle Tampa, and how did that go?
Not well.
They just held the puck on us. They pinned us in our own zone. We couldn't get anything through their neutral zone trap, and it was a disaster. Now, if you look at Chara, he faces the hardest quality of competition. Bill Como has this skater comparison tool where you can measure individual stats such as game score, possession, context. Chara's quality of competition is in the 99th percentile. His time on ice percentage of when he plays is in the 97th percentile. So if you eliminate some of his minutes and who's he's going to play with and play against, he normally played with Carlo 2 seasons ago, McAvoy last season, both young defensemen, rookies, kind of helping them in. He does the heavy lifting, and sure, his speed is atrocious, but he's got that 7'1" reach that eliminates half the zone, which does him so well. Those long strides, that big body. Guys don't want to go into the corner against Zdeno Chara.
But they don't have to, because if they're going in on a 2-on-2 or a 3-on-2 or what have you, they'll just skate by him. They don't need to go into the corner because they could just skate right by him and go in and attack the net.
See, but that's what it should be that easy, but a lot of guys don't because of his ability to poke the puck away from 13 feet away due to his arm and then the stick. He really takes up a lot of space. And so, sure, he's not the dominant shutdown defenseman he once was, but if you look at, okay, so who's going to be the shutdown defenseman? John Moore has never had great possession stats. Matt Grzelcyk is a worse Torrey Krug, and Torrey Krug had 4%. He would start almost every zone, every time he got on the ice in the offensive zone. His defensive zone starts were in the 4th percentile. He is meant to play offense. He's a power play specialist who excels at moving the puck. That's why he plays with guys like McQuaid, Miller, guys that are great stay at home. They complement each other. So that leaves the Bruins to then, it's like, all right, well, if you want to take away his minutes, then you need to acquire a top-notch left shot defenseman. But wait, we already have 8 defensemen. So that puts us in a terrible position. So it's interesting about how they're going to distribute that, about how they want to attack other teams. I mean, you have Charlie McAvoy, who's objectively a star. He is going to dominate again this season. His possession stats were through the roof. Watching him play, he looked so comfortable on both sides of the ice as the season went on. So he's your team's best defenseman. Carlo, when he gets healthy from that broken ankle, he's great in his own zone. He's not great attacking, but at least he's good in his own zone. You got Miller, McQuaid, who just punch people's faces. Good in their own zone, good penalty killers, but they don't add any offense. So that's why these Krug and Grzelcyk guys are valuable, because they can provide offense. Even if you want to go with a 4 forward, 1 defenseman on the power play, they can be that 1 defenseman. So it's interesting. Don Sweeney's always been a proponent of more defensemen than less. That's why they trade for Nick Holden, because they know the guys get injured.
Rangers legend Nick Holden to you.
I don't know if I'd put legend by it, but he didn't see a ton of time in Boston. But when guys go down, that's how it goes. But
what a great trade for the Rangers. I mean, listen, you took away Nick Holden and Rick Nash, and you gave him some nice, you gave him some nice stuff in return. So, as a Rangers fan, I thank you. And
Yeah,
I'm sure, the rest of the Rangers fan base thanks you as well. By the way.
Yeah, the first round pick, and Ryan Spooner's very good. He just didn't get the opportunity in Boston to shine.
Ryan Spooner is good. The Rangers don't know what to do with him really. He's still an RFA, so there's I don't know if there's a tug of war between management, but there certainly is a tug of war between fans whether it's to move him, to sign him, what the situation is there, because they just re-signed Mesnikov, and they don't know what to do with Spooner. But I mean, anyway, I think Spooner would have been really solid in your top six right now instead of David Backes. Move him back to the third line, do something with that instead. But as of now, the Bruins have a hole in their top six. David Backes is not a top six forward anymore. Put him on the third line, and I mean this might be a little out there, but what about trading one of your good defensemen for a top six forward, a top six winger?
A lot of people have brought that up, especially Torrey Krug, because he would absolutely command the most trade value. 60-point defensemen don't grow on trees. Now,
that would be kind of scary if they did, honestly. Just a little bit.
That would scare me because Matt Grzelcyk is a poor man's Torrey Krug. And granted, Grzelcyk signed, $1.4 million for the next 2 seasons, so very controllable, great contract, especially for a guy that played well, objectively well, in his first season. But you got Miller and McQuaid, who both kind of do the same thing. Not that they'd command a ton of value, but Jake DeBrusk is great. He really stepped in and played well this season as a rookie. If you think that he's only going to progress, Krejci is still solid, but everyone has that narrative, Krejci needs a big physical forward to play with him, hence Lucic, hence Backes when he first got here, hence Rick Nash, a guy that can win battles along the wall, play in front a little bit, because DeBrusk is a very small guy. So it's interesting how Don Sweeney's going to tackle this, especially with limited cap space, 23 guys already on the roster. Something's got to give.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a definite hole in the top six for the Boston Bruins, and there also might be a hole in the Anaheim Ducks per se, because they signed Adam Henrique to a 5-year deal. He is 30 years old. He's not getting any. I mean, he's still gonna be. He's still Adam Henrique. He's still in the prime of his career, but I don't think anybody knows what the Ducks are doing. Because they have aging guys in Corey Perry, Ryan Kessler. Their decor is weak. They have Gibson in goal, who's good, but he didn't make the timely saves that he probably should have made in the playoffs. And now you have Henrique, who now has a Ryan Kessler-esque contract with $5.825 million per year for the next 5 years. Do the Ducks have a plan, do you think?
I feel like do the Ducks have a plan could be plastered on Anaheim, like the city, because it's clear that they don't. Their core is very old. I mean, you look at their 3 best forwards, Corey Perry, Ryan Getzlaf, Ryan Kessler, all 33. Not a ton of talent coming up through the ranks. They have great defense, great young goaltending, but Henrique hasn't – I don't understand the hype around him. Yes, he scores. And if you look at fans that are fans of the deal, they point out that he led Anaheim with 8 game-winning goals, which happened to be 3rd in the league. He tied for 2nd in goals and tied for 3rd in power play goals. Okay, and great, he can score. If you look at his possession stats, his Corsi has not risen above 50% since he was 23 years old.
Yikes.
He has never been a positive possession player. And there's actually, when he was 21, 22, and 23, he was outstanding at possession, frequently over 53%. Since then, he hasn't even come close. I mean, you look at before they acquired him, the 24 games he played with New Jersey, he was 45%. Now, granted, neither New Jersey nor Anaheim are noted possession teams, but even his Corsi relative to on ice versus off ice have been negative. So it's like, okay, this guy doesn't like to play with the puck. And granted, I'm no Corsi truther. However, Corsi does do a lot of good in comparing teams that will be successful in terms of pace of play. The Lightning dominate Corsi, they're very successful. The Bruins dominated Corsi, they were very successful. So these dump and chase grind teams are going out of style. You look at, I mentioned Bill Como's skater comparison tool earlier. His possession stats are atrocious. His points are barely above average. His goals, 64th percentile, because he's a great shooter. He can shoot. His shooting percentage is in the 83rd percentile. However, he doesn't face the best quality of competition. He's the team's third line center behind Kessler and Getzlaf. So I don't understand it. And sure, you don't want to let a guy like this go, especially after you give away such quality defensemen for him. But I don't get it.
Their top line is Corey Perry, who's older and is not getting any younger. Getzlaf, who's older, not getting any younger. Rickard Rakell, who's young, who's a great player. Don't get me wrong. Rickard Rakell is a top-notch scorer. Second line, Andrew Cogliano, who will probably play until he's 75 years old because he never misses a game. He is never going to miss a game for the rest of his life. He's going to retire at the ripe age of 75, and then right off into the sunset. Ryan Kessler, who's not getting any younger. Jakob Silverberg, he's okay, he's decent. All right, I'll give you that. And then you go back to and then you look at the bottom six here. You have Nick Ritchie, who's he's a winger. He's not gonna put up 70 points or anything, but I guess he's a winger. Adam Henrique, Andre Kasha, who's decent, who's good in stretches. Invisible in others. I don't watch all 82 Ducks games, but from those that I've watched, Kasha is one of those players that will either be very noticeable or not noticeable at all. So he's a streaky player. Then you have that fourth line of whatever, basically of Brian Gibbons, who was he was put up career numbers in New Jersey for, I don't know how he did that, but Brian Gibbons, the Devils legend, Carter Rowney, who Penguins legend, I guess, and question marks at the fourth line winger. I mean, DailyFaceoff.com has Troy Terry as the fourth line winger. I don't buy that for a second because there's no way a rookie plays fourth line wing duty with Brian Gibbons and Carter Rowney and expects to develop. There's 0% chance that happens. I don't think that's going to happen. Their D-core is good in the top four, lacking seriously anywhere else. They have Hampus Lindholm, Josh Manson, solid pair. Cam Fowler, who is good but not as good as people make him out to be. He's a good player, good defensive player, but not as good as I think some people think that he is. Brendan Montour, solid top four player, and then you get to the bottom six. You have Luke Shen and Marcus Pettersson. I mean, Luke Shen, give me a break. And Patrick Eaves, who's injured right now. Will he get back to his 30 goal scoring self? Probably not. He'll probably take over for Troy Terry or for Brian Gibbons when he gets healthy at some point. But even then, I mean, he's also one of those guys that's not getting any younger, who's not going to score 30 goals anymore. I don't know where you put him. And John Gibson, who's a very solid goaltender, but this guy needs to step it up in the when it matters. I mean, what he did not. When I watched that series, I was expecting him to make saves that he just wasn't making, and you can't put all the blame on him because the team overall just didn't play well. But a goalie needs to make that one or two incredible saves that a goalie shouldn't make, and they make them anyway. Those are the kind of saves that rally the team, that get the team back in it, and he just didn't make any of them for the most part. So that played a role in it. And Ryan Miller, Sabres legend. Let's not, Ryan Miller was a god in Buffalo. And then after that he moved around a little bit, and then he declined. He's not getting any younger either. So I think if I was the general manager of the Ducks, I would have moved Getzlaf probably 2 years ago, Perry probably 2 years ago, Kessler probably at the deadline last season, because you knew they weren't gonna do anything in the playoffs. Did you think they were gonna get swept? Probably not. But at the same time, you look at their lineup, it's not raising too many eyebrows.
No, it's really not. And it's interesting that Richie and Casa are restricted free agents, and they still have about $8 million to play with. But this looks like a team that's on its last breath. They're trying to compete. Well, they have a mix of young quality defensemen and goaltending and older forwards. And once the legs start to go on Getzlaf, Perry, Kessler, all physical guys, all goal scorers, this could be their last chance. I don't see them making a ton of damage, especially when you have teams like Nashville, like San Jose, like, dare I say, Vegas again. I just don't see it.
I don't see it either. I totally agree with you. And but in terms of contracts that don't look as bad in retrospect, if you take a look at the new Elias Lindholm contract, the $4.85 million deal until 2024, it sounds bad, but if you take 4.85 and divide it by 79.5, which is the current cap in the NHL, that's about 6%. That is not a big chunk of the cap for a guy that'll put up 40 to 45 points a game, that will be dependable in the bottom six, maybe second line if you need to stretch out that offense a little bit. That's not bad.
No, it's not the worst. When it first came out, I really didn't like it. Be the first one to say that. And I'm still not a huge fan. However, the Flames have a lot of these kind of mid-sized contracts, and you look at their team, and they could be a playoff contender. I like the fact that he can play multiple positions, that he's 23. I love his passing ability. He's great with primary assists, not a great goal scorer, not a great secondary assist kind of guy, but he can generate expected goals. He can play an offensive role, good speed, good quickness, good stick skills. You just got to give him the opportunity. I feel like on this Flames team, he can continue his development from where he picked up. He can pick up from where he left off in Carolina and really shine. He's already played 374 games. He's only 23. He's had a boatload of experience, and now he's going to a major Canadian market, and hopefully he can continue to pick it up. Now, one thing that I don't think got enough press was Austin Czarnik's signing. Austin Czarnik is an incredible player, and he hasn't really had a shot. He got the raw end of the stick in Boston, where the team would promote younger prospects, and they would just happen to do really well. Yet Czarnik has had a history of playing well, a history of generating offense, quickness. He's just never really showcased it due to a combination of bad luck, poor shooting percentage. He tore up Providence in the AHL this season, more than a point a game. Absolutely incredible player. He played very well at the University of Miami, Ohio a few years back, and he would have won the Bruins' third line role. He could even, with injuries, play well on a second line role. So I really think that that is a great signing, especially when it's 2 years, $2.5 million. I think that's a really great signing for Calgary.
No, I absolutely. Well, yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I mean, Austin Czarnik is definitely gonna be a solid player for the Flames here. And one quick thing that we're gonna jump on before we get off here is Artemi Panarin, according to The Athletic, gave the Columbus Blue Jackets an ultimatum. He basically said, "All right, you have until training camp, which is September 13th. All business matters to be completed before then, and if we don't have a contract then, basically he says I'm out." He didn't expressly say that, but he said it without saying it. Panarin, I'm quoting the Athletic here. The quote is, Panarin informed Kekalainen, who is the Columbus GM, that he wants all business matters pushed aside as of September 13th, unquote. So basically, unless they get a deal done before then, he's gone. Do you think teams trade for him now, or do you think teams wait because they know Columbus is in this stranglehold? Do they wait until next July and see where Panarin is thinking about playing, instead of pulling the trigger now and hoping to make a deep run with him now, and potentially, seeing him walk off to a different team for free? What do you think? What do you think is going to happen with Panarin?
I think that's a great question. I don't think that's talked about enough, actually. And I think he's gone regardless. I think that, there have been rumors, credible rumors to rumors that, he wants to be more near the ocean for his girlfriend. There's been about everything about him, and none of it says, I want to be in the middle of Ohio. Now, he is the team's star, which he wasn't in Chicago. Granted, I feel like he's a lot better player than he was in Chicago. Necessarily out of Patrick Kane's spotlight, all of a sudden he reignites hockey in Columbus, gives them that spirit. You can't not root for Columbus, first of all.
Not only that, but he put up more points in Columbus than he did with Patrick Kane in Chicago.
Artemi Panarin is one of the best players in the league. He can dominate offensively, whether it be passing the puck, shooting the puck, possessing it. He is so gifted, so intelligent on offense. And I believe that he'd be a great addition to any team. I feel like that's an obvious statement to say, just as John Tavares would be an obvious addition to any team. But if I am a NHL general manager, I am calling Columbus right now, because I would want to get a deal done, secured. Why wait for free agency where every team can throw their hat into the rung and you really don't know what he's looking for? I feel like if you show interest in a player and make an acquisition to acquire him, that you show him, we want you here, and he will respect that. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that is the perfect thing to do, as there's no guarantee that he will re-sign with you. But I feel like that definitely helps your chances than going to have a meeting with him in July and telling him how much you want him.
You're absolutely right, Cam, and this has been a blast talking to you. You've watched Bruins camp. Front row seat, VIP section, might I add, because you were talking to Jamie Langenbrunner, Devils legend, and I guess St. Louis Blues legend, I guess, maybe. And you talked to some of these guys, and this was great, and I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely, and that'll do it for the 5th episode of Chel Squared. I'm Andrew Chelly. Thank you so much to Connor Small and Cam Kerry for coming on this week's show again. We wish Rick Carpinello the best with whatever is going on with him. Just really hope he's okay. And like us on Facebook, Chel Squared. Follow us on Twitter at Chel Squared. Subscribe to us on iTunes, on SoundCloud. We're now on Google Play, which I probably should have done in the first place, considering I have an Android phone. Probably should have done that first, but we got to Google Play as well. If you leave a review or a like, or whatever it is that you're on, a puppy gets a hug from its owner and it gets a treat. I don't make the rules, I'm just spreading facts. So please do that as well. And as always, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will talk to you again next week.